The former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Peter Hoekstra of Michigan, is back with us. Pete, thanks for your time and welcome back to America's Forum.
Good to be back with you, J.D.
Now, Pete, let's just assess this politically. Should the Democrats participate? I took a look at this and I was saying they may end up with one member, and Rosa DeLauro, who we know is married to the Democrat pollster Stan Greenberg, she says, no, there should only be one Democrat engaged in this select committee there to, I guess, be the point person for the Democrats. Your take on what may transpire in the final analysis?
Well, I think what's very interesting here, J.D., is that you and I are talking about it, which indicates, number one, that the Democrats are achieving at least part of their objective, which is to divert attention from the real issue, which is what happened in Benghazi, to you and I are talking about whether there will be 0 Democrats, 1 Democrat, or 7 or 5 Democrats who get appointed to this committee. I heard a little bit of your segment, just prior to the break, and I think you may be very, very right that there may only be one member appointed. That member will be the heckler in chief, and as you said in your segment, the best heckler in chief that the Democrats have is outgoing Democrat Henry Waxman from California. I think that's a real option. I think that's a dumb option. And I think that, Trey Gowdy and the Republicans on the committee, they should just forget about how many Democrats are on the other side, and they ought to just be talking about Benghazi, 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 what happened and what is this administration trying to hide.
Pete, a very valid point that you talked about in terms of the politics of this, and interesting from a delaying tactic that the Democrats are all about process rather than the facts, again trying to obscure what transpired at Benghazi. And of course, predictably, the New York Times this morning with an editorial basically just backing the Obama administration to the hilt and insulting with catcalls the Republican majority in the House of Representatives. You and I have been around this long enough to know that many of the network newsrooms take their cue from the Times editorial page, so we can expect the amen chorus to come pretty soon. In fact, right here on the screen, you can we have the phraseology of that editorial entitled "Center Ring at the Republican Circus," and it is worth noting the Times calling this a Benghazi kangaroo court, also known as the Select House Committee to inflate a tragedy into a scandal. Now, Pete, there's nothing surprising about this, but it's as if one hand follows the other, and you can expect the Washington media culture to try to cop a plea for the White House and the congressional Democrats.
Yeah, I think, J.D., a couple of things. Number one, we are working on this, on what happened leading up to Benghazi and those types of things at the investigative project on terrorism. There is meat here. This was a failed policy. 4 Americans were brutally murdered that night, and no one's really explained it. I think there's the second issue as to what happened in the White House after the attack in Benghazi. So I think there's at least 2 storylines, 2 investigative areas that have never really been fully explored. So there is a real reason to have these committees. New York Times, is anybody surprised that they're fully on board with this administration? Absolutely not. But, the bottom line is this is going to be an investigative Congress for the next 2.5 years, because President Obama, by saying we're just going to bypass Congress on a whole bunch of policy areas, he's clearly indicated to Speaker Boehner that, I'm not going to work with you to legislate anything. The only option that we have the only option Congress has at that point in time is to do oversight and investigations of an administration that will not legislate.
Let me return, and I appreciate what you're telling us about the fact that there are more facts yet to be revealed on Benghazi and what happened with what appears to be the ensuing cover-up. Just one more process question. since 7 Democrats voted in favor of this select committee, is it within the prerogative of the Speaker, even if the Democrats vote not to participate, could Speaker Boehner invite 5 of those 7 who voted for the panel to join as the Democratic members?
Absolutely. Speaker, although I remember the language in the resolution, he will appoint all of the members in consultation with the minority leader. And if the minority leader only exercises, what the Speaker would give her her prerogative of appointing 5 and naming 5 members, and she only decides to appoint 1 or suggest to the Speaker 1 name, I think under the resolution, the Speaker may have the latitude to invite or name. What he would do is he would invite additional Democrats to join, and if they indicated that they were willing to do it, he could appoint them to the committee. Absolutely, I think. I think under the language of the resolution that was passed, he has that opportunity.
Well, that certainly will be interesting.
The people writing the resolution envision the possibility that Nancy Pelosi might not name Democrats to the committee.
And it would be very interesting for Democrat members such as Ron Barber, who represents the Tucson, Arizona area, who voted for this select committee, to perhaps end up serving on it as one of the Democrats. Let's switch topics now, Pete, because in your role as intelligence chairman, intelligence and national security closely aligned, the Pentagon engaging in politically correct purchasing policies, the notion that...
Maybe I'm not sure, excuse me, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pete. Let's see if we can get that corrected. Can you hear me, Pete? Apparently not. So let's say goodbye to Pete Hoekstra, and let's come back and talk about the last point that he made, and this is why the resolution that passed the House to create the Benghazi Committee is so important. Because as we're pointing out, while the Speaker names the members of the Select Committee in consultation with the Minority Leader, should Nancy Pelosi not name a full complement of Democrats, then Speaker Boehner could turn to some Democrats, and the logical course of action would be to go to the 7 Democrats who voted in favor of this Select Committee and invite 5 of them to come on to the committee. Now, as you might imagine, since I represented Arizona in the Congress for 6 terms, my expertise and knowledge is primarily in the area of that delegation. 2 districts in Arizona represented by Democrats that could swing to the Republican Party this next election. I mentioned Ron Barber of Tucson. That is 1 vote and 1 invitation that might very well come from Speaker Boehner should he choose to actually exercise his powers as we believe them to exist in that resolution establishing the committee. The other Democrat voting in favor of this from Arizona's new 9th district in suburban Phoenix, the Ahwatukee area, Kirsten Sinema is her name. I would doubt that Speaker Boehner would invite Congresswoman Sinema onto the subcommittee because, and speaking candidly, no disrespect intended, the vote that Kirsten took was out of political convenience. She is an avowed leftist, but Ron Barber, it might be a very different situation. At any rate, Pete, I don't know if we reestablish contact with you. If you can hear me, final word goes to you. We've got about 30 seconds.
No, I think it's a real possibility, and I think, number one, credit goes out to Boehner's staff for actually putting that language into the provision, into the resolution. The second thing is the Democrats who voted for the resolution would be under great pressure not to accept, but they've demonstrated a willingness, and they believe politically they want to be independent of Pelosi and Obama. Accepting a position on the committee would further move them in that direction. They might do it. Unlikely, but possible.
Pete, that'll be the last word. We thank you for your insights, and we'll visit again soon. Don't you go away. There's more to come on America's Forum.